Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me clearly? Or do I need to get closer? I don't think I can get any closer. Okay, welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming to our webinar today on designing scholarly publishing type for everyday users. We are very excited to have you here, hoping more people will come in soon. We hope that you will find today's talks informative and useful. Although we're focusing on design, they're very much related to the experiences of digital products in scholarly publishing. So let me just share my slides here. Whoops. So my name is Ian. I'm a product designer at ChronosHub. I will be moderating the event today. Besides myself, there will be another keynote speaker, my colleague, Marjorie. There will be two guest speakers as well, which is Arun and Autumn. How about Marjorie, you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, just as you said, hi everyone. I am Marjorie and I'm also a senior project designer, and I will talk about the design approach through a use case that we've been working on lately.
Arun?
Yeah, hi all. Arun here, senior product manager at ClearDocs, an end-to-end publishing ecosystem for publishers from submission to peer review to production. Today, I'll be covering our design approach to how we build ClearDocs product platform.
And Autumn?
And hello, my name is Autumn Franklin. I am the user experience manager here at ACS in our publications division, and I'm excited to talk through a case study on our ACS chemistry databank.
Okay. Second on the agenda, after this introduction, I will be presenting ChronosHub's design principles, followed by Marjorie, who will talk about and demonstrate the application of our principles. Then Arun from CreaDocs will speak about their approach to product design as a vendor to the industry of scholarly publishing. And then Autumn from American Chemical Society will speak about their approach to product design as an organization in the scholarly publishing industry. And then finally, there will be a panel discussion based on your questions. So if you have any questions that you want answers to during the talks, we encourage you to post them in the Teams Q&A panel that you can find, I believe, in the top of your Teams app. As the event progresses, we will select some of your questions that we will discuss at the end of the event. Okay, so first, to give a little bit of background and perhaps also motivation for this talk today. In business, design is pretty dominantly portrayed as this superficial sensory dimension of user experience that is only to be addressed when there is a surplus of resources or a need for luxury. Although design is actually very critical for at least two significant reasons. There is the familiar notion, which is that design enables us to increase revenue and profit because good design is useful and usable. Useful and usable design is needed and wanted design sells. So this increases sales, of course, and expands market. At the same time, good design also enables us to reduce cost and expense because good design enables us to generalize and modularize. And generalizable and modularizable design is stable yet flexible. Stable yet flexible design scales. So that means that we can streamline our operations and improve efficiency. Actually, several studies, including the ones of the reports that are shown here, on companies of different sizes in different cultures, different industries, making different products or providing different services, they have suggested that the influence of design initiatives on business outcomes is actually quite significant. The studies conducted at different times over different periods suggest that companies prioritizing, integrating, and leveraging designerly ways of thinking and doing outperform companies that don't, both in terms of economic effects and brand impact. So that's why meaningful user experiences and powerful internal processes are two significant reasons for us to emphasize design and designing. And to do so, we focus on a couple of principles that I will go over next. For the practitioners of scholarly publishing, the process is quite intricate, which means that it contains a lot of pivotal steps with many critical dependencies. So for ChronosHub, designing for everyday users means simplifying user experience while maintaining workflow complexity. This we do by following these 5 principles that persist pretty much throughout and across ChronosHub products. Of course, in varying degrees, depending on the users, their use, and also the context of use. So I'll elaborate on each of them one by one. So the first principle is centralizing user goals and needs. This requires us to understand users through a synthesis of what they think, say, and do, in combination with what customers, even if they are not also users, because in some cases they are in a way, in combination with what they think and do, say, and do about not just the users, but about themselves. Because for ChronosHub, users and customers are not necessarily the same people. So our products need to consider the use goals and needs of our users as those who experience the products, as well as the business goals and needs of our customers as those who purchase them. The next principle, which is the principle of applying ordinary contemporary logic, refers to utilizing the user's background knowledge, which is established through their most common interactions with the most conventional products. The background knowledge is easily accessible and effortlessly recalled during their interactions with objects in the world, which is why applying its logic produces intuitive design. So as the example shows here, finding a venue for publication is conceptually similar to finding a product to purchase, which most of us know what looks like. So we applied the logic of digital product catalogs. The user can get an overview, they can browse in it, they can search amongst them, filter on them, and then make a selection, which is not much different from if you were about to buy a Mac computer or book an Airbnb stay. Another example is paying for publishing, which is conceptually similar to completing a transaction. So we applied the logic of e-commerce checkouts. Here the user gets a summary of their order, which is on the, you see my cursor, right, on the left-hand side, and then the cost on the right-hand side. And in addition to that, they can also make changes to them. So they can choose a different product to get, but they can also add a discount code to influence the price. And this is not much different also from paying for a digital product online or ordering a tangible good. The next principle is the principle of affording user interface interaction. This refers to using perceptible cues to indicate relevant information to get and also to indicate possible actions to do. For example, this is actually a submission form stripped off of any strong perceptible cues, so mostly based on text. And even with the distinct styling, such as like text or font weight and color, it's very poor in affording interaction. So it's not clear to the user what is it that they need and what will and won't happen if they click on something. So for enhancing the affordance, you can add graphical elements and enhancement to direct the user to the needed action. So graphical buttons, they're visually prominent, so you can easily see what the current states are of each and which should be clicked on first. And it also indicates possible actions. So you can see some of them are clearly indicating that they're not able, or at least they won't do much if you click on them. So if we apply this to the interface, so this is the submission form as before. If we apply these graphical elements and enhancement, the user can make sense of the content with more accuracy, certainty, and efficiency. So for example, the section here, the graphical section here for file upload, which is labeled on the top, in the top, it tells me as a user, this is where I manage my files for my submission. I can upload in this field here, download here, and then also designate and delete files. The next principle, which is the principle of ensuring coherence and harmony, refers to using consistent and complementary language to communicate the same, similar, or associated concepts. So the example here is showing for the user who has both authoring and reviewing activities, the representations of a submitted manuscript for publication share overall structure and attributes. So on the left-hand side, we have my submission as an author, and on the right-hand side, we have someone else's submission that I'm reviewing, but the structure and attributes are similar. So that on both of them, I find manuscript details on the left-hand side, and then follow publishing status on the right-hand side of the interface. Another example is a bit of a smaller component. This is a representation of different publication venue types on different interfaces and in different contexts. But they also share overall structure so that at a glance, I can quickly identify this is telling me something about a publication venue. So there's an image, some sort of visual, a title or a name. So in this case, you have a periodical title and then a conference name because there are two different venues. Details about the publication, venue or information in the bottom ones, information to make judgments about submission and or attendance. And then the primary action of a path to submission. Finally, the last principle that we have, which is also quite important for us given where we are, the principle of expressing brand identity. Since we're working with different customers who have their own brand identities, that's very important to us. So this principle refers to designing for human perception and user experience while at the same time facilitating customer brand recognition by using their core brand assets such as logo, color, and voice. So this one here is our publishing hub for publishers. This is a standard instance, so just a ChronosHub branded standard instance. This is the same product for ACS, so an ACS variant of the instance. And then this is the IEEE variant instance also of the same product. So now that I have presented ChronosHub principles for design, I will have Marjorie take over and demonstrate the application of these.
Yes, thanks, Yen. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the design approach. So what we are using is a combination of the design thinking and the Lean UX. The design thinking is a human-centered iterative approach to problem solving that focuses on understanding users, challenging assumptions, and redefining problems to identify alternative strategy and solution. And the Lean UX is a collaborative, fast-paced design methodology that emphasizes rapid experimentation, continuous feedback, and minimizing deliverables to focus on outcomes rather than on documentation. So those two combined allowed us, thanks to the design thinking, to bring deep user empathy and structured creativity, and the Lean UX accelerate the process with lightweight method and real-time collaboration. So it's overall structured but flexible. So now I'm going to talk about a design case, the author billing flow. This is what it looks like right now. So this is after that the author has been accepted for publication. He has to select a publishing option and then sign a license and go through the billing flow and choose a payment method. And we believe that we can improve the flow, remove the friction for our users, and reduce mistakes that is caused by unclear information and unfamiliar checkout experience. So first we have the think steps, which is about defining assumptions and hypotheses for the flow. So usually in these steps, we go through interviews, but in that case, we had pretty strong belief coming from our expert in-house, beliefs like publishing an article requires a payment and a license signature. The payment responsibility may fall on an author personally or the author-affiliated organization, and there might be a pre-existing agreement between an organization and a publisher. And we also believe that authors do not fully understand the multiple publishing options available before starting the bidding flow, and therefore mistakes are often made. And one of the hypotheses we would like to test is like if we clearly communicate payment responsibility early in the flow, then user will feel more confident proceeding and make less mistakes. The things that we could measure by fewer help tickets and increase completion rate. Another hypothesis that we would like to test is that if the checkout process feels fast and familiar, then the user will feel safer and more in control, and they will be more likely to come back to publish again. The second step to emphasize is about understanding our user needs and the mental model. So for that, we held collaborating workshop with UX development, customer service, and product teams to consolidate what we already knew about the user and publishers and identify knowledge gaps to investigate further. I think also it's important to mention that for us, it is important to include our tech team as soon as possible to investigate what is technically feasible or not. And through this step, so we defined our user types, our publisher requirements, our user, author, publisher goals, and we thought about how to get closer to our user mental map. So it's by using familiar checkout standards to reduce cognitive load, to communicate about the publishing option early in the flow, not just at the checkout, and use the same language as our users, and to provide contextual help and tooltips to explain each payment path. Then we have the define steps. So it's about framing the user problem. So after gathering insight from stakeholders' input, we run cross-functional alignment workshop to define our problem statement and agree on the key user needs. So we considered the user needs and the users and the publisher context to define the user needs statement and the problem statements, which bring us to the make. This is our current state. So we explored multiple design directions for quick sketching session and collaborating prototyping before refining the solution using our design system. Why is it important to use our design system? Is to assure consistency across component and interaction, so the user recognizes where he is and he knows that he is at the right place. And it's also important to make sure that everything is accessible and responsive, and that we also have visual and behavior coherence with the brand identity. Now I'm gonna switch my screen to show you our prototype about this specific topic. So we are an author and we are logged in the ChronosHub platform, and we can see the manuscript tracking board, where we can see that we have a publication accepted with a button saying complete author. So I'm gonna click on this. And here to start, I have a model asking the author to check the affiliation. This is one of the mistakes that the author might do the most, maybe kind of the most, is like to not have the correct affiliation. So to avoid having our user do the full process and then asking for a change affiliation, then we ask directly to make sure that this is the correct one. Then we are on the checkout process. So we use standard design, where we have the summary on the right part and the options on the left one. We can see that we have directly the agreement that is showing here that the user can activate or deactivate. And then we have the different publishing option. So for each card, you can see that you have the exact same kind of information to make sure that the author will find everything that he needs. So we have the kind of publishing option, the license. What does that mean? What does it mean to sign this license? The embargo. So we know that for open access, we don't have embargo, but we have for the subscription model. So it's just to align that we have the same kind of information. We showed it on each publishing options. And then we have a clear understanding on the price. So here we are using the agreement, so we can see that it's $0. I'm going to confirm selection. We can, after that, select optional services, and can see on the right part that is we have the summaries of the publishing options. We confirm. Then we are on the billing information, so I confirm my address. I can add a new one, or I can edit this one if it's not that there is a mistake. Confirm, and then the user can select a different payment. Then to confirm, they have to read the license agreement. I agree with this. I agree with this. and then I confirm. And here our author can find the invoice, and they can also go ask for a funding request directly from here. I'm gonna stop sharing again and go back to the presentation. So we are at the make stage, but after that, we'll go to the testing approach. So for that, we will conduct usability tests. We will ask real user to complete a real world use case, and we will observe the task completion, decision making, and point of confusion. We'll collect qualitative feedback on clarity, confidence, and perceived friction. And then we will identify patterns in user behavior and feedback. We will do a map of pain points to specific design elements, and we will do a prioritization of issue based on impact and frequency. And we will, of course, make sure that the design accommodates edge cases and diverse user needs. And after launch, it will not be just that, we will continue to closely monitor user behavior through analytics and behavioral metrics to uncover any lingering friction point. And if we detect any that we need to prioritize, then we will ideate and iterate again on the flow to make the experience optimal for a user. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you,
Yes.
Marjorie. Next, we have Arun from CreaDocs, who is in a similar position as ChronosHub, also making products for scholarly publishing industry. Arun, could you please share with us your approach to product design?
Yeah. Thank you again, Marjorie. Hope I'm audible. Tough act to follow, but I'm going to do my best in talking about how we approach design at CreaDocs. So our presentation is going to be more about a high-level approach to design, along with some actionable frameworks that you can hopefully apply in your organization, right? Let's start off with a classic Dilbert comic from almost 25 years ago. I think this perfectly encapsulates the challenge at hand, is to build simple, easy-to-use solutions in a rather complicated problem space, publishing, right? So how do you go about doing that? We start off with a quick hat tip to Steve Jobs and remind you that design is more about the experience rather than the appearance. We'll briefly break down UX versus UI shortly. So while good design is not rocket science, it can be hard to pull off. So one simple formula to maybe make it easier is to truly care for and understand the meaning the users seek by offering them enough clarity and confidence to get their work done. And that's how you truly build empathetic products for your users, right? And one skill to use is to build your intuition muscle by truly understanding, anticipating the user's intent. There's a great quote from Dylan Field, the co-founder of Figma, which all of us love to use to build prototypes. It says intuition is the hypothesis generator. So the more number of hypotheses you can generate, the more likely you are to anticipate various scenarios, possibilities that the user can go through. And when you solve for and address those needs, the user walks away feeling that they've interacted with the truly intuitive system, right? So that's a great skill to work on. And a simple way to do that is to almost wear the hat of a journalist by asking these simple questions. A simple 5W1H framework, where all of us are familiar with the 5Y analysis, which help you peel away and dig deeper into the purpose. This helps you understand the different dimensions of the problem. Who are your users? What are they trying to get done? What's driving them to get it done? At what point in the user journey do they need to get it done? Where in the product, in the feature space, would they get it done? And ultimately, this informs how you go about building those solutions to cater to these problem areas, right? We talked about UX and UI. We have a simple mnemonic to help us articulate the difference. We call it the 3 A's. User experience is all about anticipation, anxiety, and assurance, where you anticipate what the user is trying to get done. We follow the classic JTBD, jobs to be done framework to understand the functional emotional needs somebody's trying to get done and what expectation they come armed with when they use your product. And in the course of using the product, we start now anticipating what anxieties the user would go through. What are the friction points, the frustrations, any fears and worries they might have in using unfamiliar products, and hopefully start providing assurance and confidence for them to complete their job successfully. On the flip side, UI is about actions, anatomy, and appearance. So all the interactions the user interacts with your product, inputs, your choices, confirmations. Anatomy is about how they get tied together in your UI in terms of the layout, the hierarchy, and how the actions flow through. And finally, appearance, as Madhuri said, staying on brand, having consistent design experiences across the product, and stamping your design philosophy and approach to aesthetics is how you build truly pleasant and delightful products. Now, at ClearDocs, we have a strong discovery discipline where we ask a lot of questions by talking to stakeholders. So we conducting user interviews, forming a customer advisory board is a great way to talk to diverse user personas to understand different perspectives and inputs and ideas that help you inform your design approach better. We're lucky enough that our publishers have us tag along to attend their editorial board meetings. We get to hear from the horse's mouth. Editors are your regular users of the product. So talking to them truly uncovers the pain points that they are facing and help us better imagine the experience for them. Talking to your frontline user support is also a great channel to uncover common user frustrations that you should solve for. And I would say hold a special place in your heart for your complainers. Now, these are your power users that use the product deeply day in, day out. And by talking to them, interacting more closely, you truly start to uncover pain areas that they typically go through. And they're more than happy, we found, to connect with you, talk with you, and help you solve it for them. And they truly care about helping you solve it for them. So I think these are your key users to go after. Imagination is all about converting all the ideas inputs you've gathered into tangible prototypes. So start with specific problem statements in terms of what your design is solving, charting out user journey maps, both the happy and the weird parts. Quickly sketching out wireframes helps you do away with the bad ideas and get to the good stuff. Now convert them to interactive prototypes using tools like Figma. And of late, with AI coming into the mix, we started using tools like Vercel and Lovable to quickly spin up actionable prototypes and have various A/B options to give to users to show and tell, and also seek more useful feedback to help you iterate and improve before you finalize the design and take it for development. In terms of setting up designs, so standardization is key, where you want to find solid design systems, build reusable design libraries, not just for your designers, but also for your developers to translate your design to code and then ensure that there's a harmony and consistency across the board. Having solid QC checklists to ensure that every design is certified before it goes out to users. I think maintaining decision logs is crucial, I would say, in terms of what you would and would not do, in terms of choices you make. For example, we want to avoid multi-level pop-ups within the product, avoid multi-level scrolls for users that may become annoying. So these help you keep a rule of thumb when you build new products and new features in your journey. And using simple metrics like, say, user click counts can help you quickly score and shortlist ideas that are working and that are becoming tedious. Right? This helps you really understand the shortest path to how a user can solve a problem to the number of clicks they get through within the UI. Now, obviously, continuous improvement is key. You want to periodically conduct UI audits to clean up your design debt and improve things consistently. Localization is equally important. At ClearDocs, we have users from the global south, be it authors, publishers. So having the language options helps them engage with the product better and remove the language barriers. Watch out for areas of personalization where somebody can personalize the experience and be comfortable. Things like your saved use, saved filters help users seamlessly switch back and forth within your product and use it the way they want to. And also be mindful of investing time and effort to accessibility compliance with guidelines looming large. Make sure you're future-proofing your product as you go along. We talk about user empathy and user-centered design. So humanizing everything is key to that. So it helps if you treat UI UX as a conversation where the product is almost a helpful concierge that interacts with your users. So the UI copy comes into play. Avoid programmable lingo. Keep all the interactions, be it your labels, buttons, messages, validations, natural and direct and actionable. And one great exercise we do is actually do a role play where the designer interacts with the user. Have them play out an actual conversation if the system were a user, as your actual human being. This helps us uncover what the dialogue looks like and uncover which are simple steps, which are TDF steps, and which are ambiguous steps, and help us truly craft out the flow better and make it more natural for somebody to interact with. And we talk about guiding users. So as much as possible, try to have help available in situ within the app as much as possible. users hate going through bulky user manuals to figure out how to use something. So having embedded walkthrough wizards, quick tours, in-app chatbots, information hotspots is going to be that much useful for users to quickly use and then use your features easily. So recently we launched a multi-file tagger feature where authors can upload all their files. System automatically designate them as manuscript, figures, cover letter, etc. User can review that, auto extract the details, and then confirm the form. And we had like a quick step guide along with this feature, made it that much easier for authors to quickly adopt and start using seamlessly. Given the space we are in, where there are existing systems at play for quite a while, the challenge is to move from familiar to fresh. So this comes in with the baggage of understanding existing users' expectation behaviors in their current systems. And the core is to abstract the functions out while you reimagine and refine the flow on the form and truly make it your own. And obviously, getting feedback helps you refine and keep it going. In our case, when we built the manuscript tracking dashboard, we took the erstwhile lists and reimagined them as Kanban boards to visually represent how work flows within the publisher's organization. And this was a great differentiator for us back then. Now, it started with a comic. I'm a vegan cartoonist, like to apply the comic principle to what I do. So here's a simple story of me playing peer reviewer to my better half to mix the results. So any story follows the simple 3-act structure of a setup, tension, resolution. If you have to apply the same 3-act structure to your user stories, all of you crafting agile user stories are familiar with the term. So look at how any interaction can be started into these 3 steps. We set up the premise, the intent, the tension, which is the anxiety, frustration, pain points, and then the resolution of how somebody can get the work done helps you build meaningful features. And always be mindful of zooming out, being aware of the previous and next stories that play out to understand the user journey end to end. I want to leave you with a quick fun note. As designers, you need to put yourself and your designs out there and keep up with the beat, learn new moves while still being cool and creative. So always remember to bring the fun and build great products. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. It's a very detailed and clear illustration of the process that you go through to develop products at CreaDocs. So next we have Autumn from ACS, who is in a slightly different position than we are, because she is in an organization who is both customer and consumer of these products that we make, but at the same time, she is also a part of making products for their own organization. So Autumn, please share with us your approach to product design.
Thanks, Ian. So today I'm actually going to take a different approach and walk you through a case study that looks at one of our newest products, the ACS Chemistry Data Bank, to show how we're trying our best to simplify research data sharing. So I'll start by walking through the submission flow as it stood before, talk through the key problems that we saw when we released this MVP, and then how we tackled making a better solution for our users and what the impact of that was. So first, what is the ACS Chemistry Data Bank? It's a service that enables authors to share their primary data. So authors can freely upload their primary research data to be shared through the data bank. Each data set gets assigned a DOI and it's made freely available to the public. So our mission is to enable open, transparent, and reproducible data sharing in science. And this isn't super common practice today, which is why tackling this user flow is really important to get right and to really simplify. So showing an overview of the author submissions flow, this is really just a zoom into the steps that people take to submit to the chemistry data bank. As most of us maybe know, there's a lot of steps that authors and researchers need to take before they get to the point of submitting their manuscript. And there's 8 more steps right here that they have to take as they're going through a submission. So first they start by beginning a manuscript submission in our ACS Publishing Center. And then as one of the questions in their submission form is whether they'd like to submit their primary research data along with their manuscript. And if folks do decide to opt into that and submit, they need to leave the Publishing Center and go to the Chemistry Data Bank to make their submission and then go through the steps that are there, which are describing their data set, creating a README file, uploading that README file, reviewing and submitting their data set, and then go back to the Publishing Center to finish their submission. So it's a lot of steps. You can already hear that going between platforms could be a sticking point for folks and make it a bit cumbersome. So that's definitely something we want to continue to improve, but we saw a lot of stickiness and a lot of opportunity at this step right here, step 5, creating the README file. And I don't know if you know what a README file is. I'm not sure that I still completely understand what a README file is, but most importantly, our authors didn't really know what it was, and they didn't have it prepared already, and they needed to also leave the CDB platform to the chemistry data bank to create it. So we really wanted to dive into this problem. We saw that they had to pause their current submission flow, so it was disruptive. They had to leave the platform, and then we had to expect that they would return. They were unfamiliar with the file type and unfamiliar with the markdown format. And so these were a lot of opportunities for us to improve this experience. And so we worked with the product team, our product team and our UX team put together a research plan, and we decided to do some moderated usability tests and interviews with 8 researchers to have them walk us through what their process, walk and talk us through their process of submitting to the chemistry data bank. And here's what they had to say when they got to the README file creation stage. I think some people might get defeated at this step and quit. I wouldn't sign up to do this again. So this was just heartbreaking feedback to get, but it was really helpful and really useful. But this was critical. We flagged it as a critical fix with the product team, and we needed to figure out what to do. So we found that the README file step out of the 4 steps within the CDB process, the CDB platform, was rated the lowest performing task. It had the highest difficulty. Folks also took about 5 minutes with the facilitator on a call with them to get through the process of just making the README file, which we thought was a bit long. And we also noticed that most folks used Google Docs, which was just a helpful context for us to understand what sort of platforms they were familiar working in, sort of editable platforms. And so we asked ourselves, how might we create a more simplified and integrated process for creating the README files so that we can increase dataset submissions? That was the goal. So folks were unfamiliar with the file type. We learned that through our interviews. Most people did not have a file that was ready to upload, and we lost people at this step. They would abandon the mission here and just go back to submitting their original manuscript. So we thought that removing the upload could declutter the interface, declutter the number of steps that folks had to consider, because our assumption was that most people didn't have a README file to upload if they even knew what it was. And they also wanted more flexibility. It was cumbersome, it was rigid, they had to go in and out of different platforms. So we introduced an inline editor to allow people to create their README content and the markdown within the chemistry data bank platform directly. We had a couple of constraints with implementing this solution. We needed to turn it around quickly because it was clearly deterring people from making submissions to the chemistry data bank, and we wanted to resolve this very quickly. And we also had limited resources. We only had 1 dedicated developer to work on the solution. So they came up with using an open source library that was already existing so that we didn't have to build a solution from scratch. So we were able to deliver that value to the user much more quickly without straining our internal resources. And this is how it looks now. We have the inline editor. Now folks are able to use placeholder text within the markdown file so that they don't have to start from scratch. As we said, most people didn't know what a README file was and weren't familiar with markdown. And so we took a little bit of that work away for them and gave them some placeholder text to kind of work with, because the most important thing was sharing their data. And the markdown was just an additional step in that process. So hoping that this would cut down on the time on task and also keep people in the flow so that we don't lose them if they had to leave the platform and go to something like a Google Docs to create a README file. Here's a quick side-by-side. We decluttered, I don't know if you can see my mouse. We decluttered this top part. There were a lot of instructions to read. It was just a lot of information. There was a tooltip here, some issues with hierarchy. So we cleaned that up a little bit. We gave people the ability to download their README file after they create it. And it was just much more streamlined. And here's what people had to say.
Okay, and then now I'm Van. I overall was incredibly pleased with the ease of use. I think particularly if I describe one thing that was nice, it was the README file, because that could have been onerous, and you made it incredibly easy.
And another participant.
Right. Anyway, I really like this utility, right? Because yeah, that's really nice. Say he loved the Markdown preview editor.
Good to know.
I really like that a lot. I love that. That's so nice.
So we clearly got much better feedback. So this was a part of a follow-up study that we're actually synthesizing the data for now. These two participants had much different perspectives on the README file creation than the first two that I showed you. And that's resoundingly positive. So we definitely know we're moving in the right direction, but we don't stop there, right? We're always improving. We're continuing to improve, just like everyone else spoke about today. It's an iterative process of kind of testing and going through that cycle of refinement and continuing to talk to your users. So we're looking to improve the README file creation, improve and cut down on the number of steps that folks have to take. We might even explore, what might it look like for Markdown not to be required for data sharing. And our biggest task really is evangelizing data sharing and making sure that authors understand the value of being transparent with your data and producing results that are reproducible, allowing people to build upon their work. And that's really what the chemistry data bank is trying to enable. So as I mentioned, we're working on a study right now. We're still synthesizing the data from this, but we've already noticed that one of our initial findings might not have been, the right path. So we've realized in talking to this most recent batch of researchers that they're more tech savvy than the first group of folks that we talked to. They're a lot more, they know what a README file is. They're more familiar with the Markdown format. We can tell through the interviews that they're just much more inept at sort of they're able to interact with technology a lot better, even in their use of Teams. And so these folks actually would prefer to have the option to upload their README file instead of just creating it inline. So that's a great insight for us and something that we need to consider. Maybe we reintroduce the upload function. And so that sort of kind of leads me into a recent insight that was sparked. We talk a lot about validating our assumptions, and that's what we do with user research, right? We have an idea, we want to go talk to people to make sure that we're right. But I think we should kind of reframe that and make sure that we're wrong about something and validate our assumptions. So even when we think we're right or it's good enough, we can always do better. And I feel like that's our role as product designers, as UX designers, to figure out where we're wrong and where we can do better. And that's what I have today. Thank you.
Thanks, Autumn. This was a really great demonstration of design applied effectively and based on real evidence. I think this also shows how, like, especially with the insight at the end, that some of the things that inform us has less to do with publishing. Tech-savvy users, we didn't think about that when we think of our users, or for us, also our customers. They're publishing practitioners. We think about submitting a manuscript, cleaning up a manuscript, writing stuff, uploading stuff in like manuscript submission language. But like we said in the beginning, they're just people using conventional products in their everyday lives. So it's very interesting. So now that we've had the opportunity to hear product design approaches for this industry of scholarly publishing from different perspectives and also at different levels, we can go to the next bit, which is, hold on, let me share my screen. The discussion. So we've selected a couple of questions to be answered. I don't know what they are yet because I didn't look yet, but let's find out. So the first question is the same UX and or UI applied to the same products for the same users and or customers? I'm interested in hearing this from you both, actually, because Autumn, I guess most of your users are ACS users, and maybe some of the commonalities will enable you to keep design more consistent, whereas it's likely the opposite or slightly different for you at CreaDocs. Autumn, maybe you could tell us how this works for you first.
Yeah, I think we're definitely on a mission to make user experience more consistent across our products and services. We launched a design system last year to sort of push us along on that mission. But I also think, yeah, it is important to consider the context and who the users are. There's a lot of overlap between our different personas, our authors, our researchers, our editors. And I think there is an opportunity for us to keep things fairly consistent and introduce uniqueness where it makes a lot of sense. If someone's performing a particular action over and over again, and that's a very niche persona, that might be an opportunity to make something a little bit more tailored.
How about you, Varun?
By and large, yes, to echo what Autumn said, we want to keep the UX UI consistent for different user personas, while being mindful of providing contextual variations in terms of actions they can do, information they should and should not see. So therefore, some variation comes into play, but by and large, the framework remains same. One area where we try to experiment is we do have certain micro products that we spin off as offshoots, and that allows us to probably go more wilder directions to pursue different approaches and see how it lands. And while they get back to the product, that gives us a chance to step out of the boundaries and see what works to help us continuously improve how the larger design could shape up.
Yeah. So definitely keep some things consistent, but also give ourselves some room to address more unique use cases or users. Next question we have is, oh, that's long. What do you think is important for UX designers to keep in mind when implementing and governing a design system? And are there any components you believe are specific to our industry that are often left out? Marjorie, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think like that's kind of the same answer as before. Like we need to be have the same consistency and like be coherent and have harmony in our designs. I don't believe there are specific components. Maybe we can tweak it a little so it will feed the use. But it is like the same as we can find on any other platform. And we need to, like, I think it's also important to say that we should not invent anything, because if it's already existing out there, for example, the checkout process is existing everywhere and it's the same standard. So we should not invent something completely new, but just reuse what is already out there, so the user won't feel lost.
Autumn, with ACS, do you have any unique components that you've had to make?
No, this is a really interesting question. Thinking about what might be specific to our industry, and I had to double check and scan through our component list. There's nothing that's specific to scholarly publishing or our platforms that are in our design system, but that isn't to say that we don't have reusable components per se, like within Figma or within we have something called a Schrodinger's library that holds components that we reuse often but aren't a part of the design system. Like, for example, there's a lot of components on our article page. Like, an article page is a very specific use case that does not apply to the rest of our products. So it's adjacent to the design system, but not a part of the core.
Yeah. How about you, Arun?
From a UI components, not much variance, but I think one area where we've seen some expectations is on the UI copy. Now, different publishers are accustomed to be married to certain words they use. So a publisher may call it APC, somebody may call it APF, somebody else may call it something else. And they're very particular about having the exact word appear within the UI. And therefore, configurability helps us to assuage the UI to speak different words that mean the same to different publishers. And I think that's only variance we have grappled with of late.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's also the things that, since we're working with different customers who use different vocabulary to name the same concepts, we have to abstract from what they call it sometimes to make the component express the concept that the term is addressing, rather than just trying to visualize the word. So I agree. I definitely agree with that. Next question is, how do you collect and integrate user feedback to understand issues related to existing interface features and design to implement improvements? I think we've all spoken about how to collect. Maybe it would be interesting to, Autumn, you showed it already a little bit, how you went from data to design, basically. Arun, maybe you could share a bit on how you do this. How do you, if you get feedback like unprompted, so maybe they're sending you an email asking for something, or even if you have testing or interviews with your users, how do you then make sure that you consider those in a meaningful way and also to make it somehow valuable for you in the design process?
Sure. Yeah. One thing you've set up is to have recurring calls with, as I said, the customer advisory board and some power users. And well, it's hard to get all of them into the same room together. We're able to now bounce off and cross-pollinate ideas and feedback across users. And I think our challenge is to look for consistent signals that come through from different user perspectives, and try to also challenge what somebody may not be aware of this point of view. So it helps us to have that healthy, I would say, balance between different perspectives, and hopefully stick with one decision, move it out, seek feedback, and obviously repeat and rehash. So that's how we do it.
Yep. Maybe one more question. Do we have time? I think we have time for one more question. This is 2 questions. What would you recommend doing when it isn't possible to do proper testing with users for all features due to lack of resources? Some realities can only afford it for development of major functionalities, but not for minor improvements and features. This is quite interesting, actually, because
yes.
we are also chasing time sometimes. So this is definitely an issue that we're dealing with. Marjorie, maybe you can share some of your recent experiences.
I think that's also what I was saying before. Like, we are not reinventing anything. We are using design flows that are already out there. So when we do not have time to do proper testing, what we do usually is like we're using the same kind of design that is like existing already, and we know that it's working for, I don't know, Facebook or YouTube or Amazon. If it's working for them, it's going to work for us as well, because our users are
using YouTube and Amazon.
Yes, they're normal people like you and me. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my personal experience with submitting during my time was 3 times in 2 years. So definitely was on YouTube way more than that. How about you, Autumn?
Yeah,
How
I
do
wanted
you-
to answer this one.
Yes.
This is definitely something we run into a lot. So we have one dedicated researcher and a lot of different products and services, and obviously a huge user base. So we cannot test everything, and so we lean heavily on past studies. What we do know, we lean on analytics, which is only part of the story. Doing a lot of, like you said, competitive analysis, or looking at like inspirational products like the YouTubes, or that's not necessarily applicable to us, but as an example, we do a lot of that. And maybe even sometimes you can lean on your internal teams. I mean, we have biases, but something that we benefit from is that our staff is also made up of lots of former scientists and folks who can draw on their past research experience to tell us, what they think about certain things, or having possibly like advisory boards set up or committees and things where you can get feedback. We have managing editors that are kind of able to give us input as well. So leaning on your internal resources and what existing information you have, and then prioritizing what you can actually spend money on doing research on.
Right. Arun, I don't know if you have many rapid design and development cycles, but how do you deal with not being able to test everything?
Yeah, until obviously we have a common set of recurrent test case that we run to our new stuff. But from a user interaction standpoint, we have a healthy mix of users who like to come on live calls and give critique, versus we send recorded videos to other users who may watch it asynchronously and get back with feedback, versus just giving a gist of idea to somebody who may come back with thoughts. So it helps to have, I think, different levels of information sent out to get different perspectives and then inform that to the next development testing cycle.
Okay. I think I was just glancing over the question again. There's a distinction between major functionalities and minor improvements. So I think one of the things that allows you to roll out minor improvements is to rely on, like you said, Autumn, prior research, existing products, because if these little logics are used by most, if you apply them to your product, especially if it's minor, the consequences aren't going to be that fatal. You can be pretty much sure that it's going to work. Of course, you would want to test your major functionalities, but also if you look into methods of testing or methods of research in general, whether that be interviews prior to designing and developing, or analytics post-launch, there are rapid methods of researching and like observing the user's interactions with the product. So yeah, I think that would be all. We almost don't have time anymore, but before we end, I would like to thank everyone for participating today. I'm very excited to see this many people coming because this is a bit peripheral to publishing design. So thank you to our attendees. Also, thank you to our guest speakers, Arun and Autumn. Of course, thank you to my colleague and co-keynote speaker, Marjorie. We hope that this was as intriguing to you as it was interesting to us. If you have more questions about this topic that you want answered, or maybe some compelling ideas for a different topic to talk about in the future, you can share them using our feedback form linked in the Q&A panel. Yes, and then it's also in this slide deck that we will upload onto our website that you can download, and then you can access the feedback form from this card here. So I also want to share the upcoming webinar that we have, which is on trust through verification. Again, did you drop the link is also in the Q&A panel, and it will also be in the slide deck that will be uploaded to our website. So you should be able to sign up there. Again, thank you all for participating. We hope to hear from you and see you again soon. Thanks.